Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning. And today we've got another combination that I'm really excited to see what kind of results we can actually get from it. Because there's a chance that it might give us a really good looking pattern. But I think it's going to come down to what can the shell do and how consistent is the shell based on some previous tests that we've done with these and similar shells. But if it works, we should see a pretty decent looking pattern. But as for the shell we've got out here today, it's one that Joseph sent in. So big thank you to him for sending some of these shells. We've got some of the Federal 3rd degree shells out here today. They are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, ounce and 3/4 payload of number 5, 6, and 7 shot, moving about 1250 feet per second. And from what I gather, the number 5s and 6s in these shells are lead pellets, and the number 7s are the TSS pellet. So definitely a pretty interesting mixed loading here with lead and TSS in different shot sizes. That in theory should give you a pretty full and dense looking pattern, but I don't know. We just got to do some more testing with it and see how well it actually does continue to perform. And as for the setup we've got to run them through today, I brought out the Remington 1187 here with this choke. This is an HS Strut UnderTaker 665 constriction turkey choke. It is definitely a budget choke at like $23, $24, something like that. And I know I'm going to have a lot of people asking. This choke is technically labeled for lead and plated lead only. However, this choke is made from the exact same steel and is pretty much the exact same construction, except for not having porting, that their actual dedicated long-range TSS choke is. So there really should be no reason why this choke would not shoot TSS through it. I think chances are they label it that way because they think people are going to try and shoot steel through it, which would not be a good idea, but I don't foresee us having any problems here. But either way, we're going to see how this thing does with those 3rd degree shells, since it did really well last week with the longbeard shells. But as for today's test, everything is the same as usual. The turkey paper's at 40 yards. I've also got the chronograph, so we'll be able to get our velocity out of those shells. I have some decently high hopes for this combination, because at least in theory, it should work well together, but I think it's going to come down to what are these 3rd degree shells actually capable of. So let's head over here and take this shot and just see what kind of pattern it gives us. Okay, so that shell gave us 1329 through the chrono. The box claims 1250, so we are a little bit above their claim, definitely here. Now, that's not entirely unusual for shells like this either. We do have a 28-inch barrel on that shotgun, which is probably a little bit longer than the 24 or 26-inch turkey type of barrel that they probably tested these shells through at the factory. So it's not too surprising that we saw a little bit above their claim anyway. But how well did they actually pattern down there at 40 yards? Let's go down and take a look. All right, now we're down here at our 40-yard target, and this is what we got. And it's pretty interesting, I gotta say. Now, we absolutely do have a dead bird. There are 4 through the brain and probably 5 or 6 more down the spine. So definitely would have hammered that turkey, no doubt about it. Now, I think our core was just a touch off to the left here, because that is definitely the hottest area of the pattern, right in here behind his neck. And that core area, although not super tight necessarily, it's definitely plenty good enough to take you a bird out to 40 yards all day long. But backing up here and looking at the rest of the target, we get a little bit better picture of the whole pattern. You can definitely tell that I think our core favored a touch left, but the pattern as a whole is kind of pretty open. We definitely had a start of a decent core area, but the rest of it just doesn't look like there's enough constriction here. And it is a 665, so we could go a little bit tighter, but with these shells, especially being a flight control wad, I don't know that we really want to. Now, this doesn't look blown open to me. It just looks like not enough constriction. As we can see, there's a ton of pellets scattered all over the rest of the paper, almost looking like a waterfowl pattern if I were to just show you the edges of the paper. But we definitely had a main core area of the pattern starting to form there. So I don't know on this one. These shells have been very touchy so far to get to perform. I just think they are a little bit over designed for what they need to be. But I guess at the end of the day, that's not a terrible turkey pattern. It's a little bit too broad for my taste anyway, because you do definitely start to have to be careful about having other birds near him. But if you are going to be hunting in at a little bit closer ranges, definitely inside of 40 at that 25 to 30 range and you want a little bit of leeway, yeah, that shell would absolutely be a pretty decent option, I'd say. So this one is kind of on the fence. If we just had that main, say, I don't know, 15, 16-inch circle worth of core area there, yeah, it would be a relatively decent turkey pattern. A little bit more broad, a little bit more open, but not bad. But seeing the rest of how open this pattern is, it's really kind of on the fence for me. It's not a bad turkey pattern by any means. It's absolutely good enough to get the job done for you, but I definitely would prefer to see it a little bit tighter with less of that shot being sporadic all around the edges. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and as you can see, yep, it sure is a Federal Flight Control wad. I believe they call this one the Flex wad, with these slots cut down the side instead of the flaps on the side. But either way, it looks pretty much normal. Tail fins opened up about perfectly even. No rips or pinholes or anything. Nothing stuck down in there. Not even really any super noticeable bulge here in the side like we get sometimes. There's a little bit of one in a couple small areas across here, but definitely not terrible. So the wad looks pretty good. Absolutely nothing I'd be concerned with at all, but I'd definitely be curious to see what it does if we do run it through a little bit tighter of a choke as well. But as for today, not really anything to be concerned with. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that pattern right there? It would take you a bird all day long out to 40 or 45 yards, but it is just that little bit more open. If we had that main central area of the pattern, 16-inch circle or so, we'd be looking pretty good, just a little bit more broad and not necessarily as tight. However, we definitely see a much more open pattern around the edges, which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it is something that I typically don't prefer to see in my turkey patterns, because you definitely have to be careful about other birds being close to him. And when your pattern is kind of that broad around the edges, you do get some pellets in the meat as well. So definitely kind of a mixed bag on this one. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected? Were you a little bit surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these third degree shells? And if so, what have been your results? And what chokes have performed well for you? Or what constrictions have done well for you? And maybe what other chokes or setups do you want to see these put through? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to film for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.